Hello and welcome to Ratio Dialogue with me, Jonas Gravström. Today we will have an English episode, since our guest, Dan Klein from George Mason University, is an American and naturally speaks English then. And Dan is also a fellow at the Ratio Institute. Today we will talk about Adam Smith and how he can help you in the labor market today. Yeah, Dan, it's lovely to have you here. It was a long time no see, and nice to see you in Sweden. So, did you think that you will pursue an academic career the first day you stepped your foot on a university?
Actually, I was thinking about that, yes. I entered university thinking about a career and ideas, yes.
How old was you then? Because when I took my first step at the university, I did not think about that at all, I think.
I guess I was 17 or 18, yes.
Wow, yeah, but how come you can kind of figure out that so soon?
I got drawn into ideas when I was 15 or 16, and it's always meant a lot to me. So I started thinking along the lines of a career in thinking and scholarship that early.
Oh, really? So your first paper, how do you feel about that now? I haven't read it, so I don't know.
I'm not sure. I can't say. Probably not so good, but I'm not even sure what that would be.
I know what mine would be, but yeah, kind of the same feeling as you. And as far as I know, you're kind of the premier Adam Smith scholar in the world. I maybe don't know all the scholars about Adam Smith, but so how did you come to focus on Adam Smith?
Well, you've been, I guess, reading too much press coming from from me or something. I don't think the world sees it that way. Sorry, and then you asked
how come you
so much of Smith.
Yeah.
Well, I find him extremely rich and rewarding and seminal, and I really like this mode of reading carefully, thoroughly, understanding the whole body of the texts, of all of his texts. I just think he's super.
Why not? I took a course with you, and I really enjoyed reading Adam Smith. It was quite surprising, considering it was quite old and quite a lot, also. So we're today going to discuss a paper you wrote. It's both in Swedish and in English for the readers who want to read it in Swedish. So you can see it in Ekonomisk Debatt, and we will put up links and things on the screen for you to get there.
Yeah.
But so we'll talk about Adam Smith and the workplace. And so what can Adam Smith learn us today about how to manage our work life?
Well, this book is about sentiments,
Yeah.
the sharing of sentiments, sympathy, and virtues. And those topics are very rich and very obviously pertinent to all of human conduct, but they can be adapted, applied to the workplace for sure. All of communication, in fact, involves sentiment.
Yeah.
Your sense of agreement and disagreement arises, it comes with feelings. They sort of impel your feelings of agreement and disagreement. So even reasoning and conversation and communication are laced with sentiments, interpenetrating sentiments. So understanding sentiments and the sharing of sentiments, or the not sharing when they don't agree, is very important, and there's a lot of wonderful analysis offered by Smith with a lot of applications and illustrations. I do think it's a good way to approach workplace issues, HR issues, employment, employer relations issues, customer supplier issues, competition issues, everything issues, just to improve workplace life, workplace productivity, workplace enjoyment.
Yeah. So what would you say is the kind of main challenges today in the kind of modern society?
In modern society?
Yeah.
Well, we always have the challenge of having a feeling that we have a meaningful and rewarding life. And I think sympathy and sentiment and virtue very much pertain to that perennial problem, perennial human problem. And the larger society is, and today it's incredibly large and interconnected, The harder it is to kind of think about your contribution to the good of the whole, which I think is essential to human beings, the whole, I guess, being humankind. And then we have different interpretations of that, giving rise to different sentiments, different affiliations, and so on, different senses of how you contribute, let's say, in the workplace. This could be political, but it also, of course, can be quite apart from politics, because we all contribute in the workplace, maybe quite apart from politics. So, yeah, big questions about the soul. That's very much always front and center with Smith. But it also has to cash out and work in everyday experience and practice. So you have to kind of think about the whole, traversing connections from the small to the big. To justify the small, you need to go for the if you like, the low to the high. We need ideas about the high and how it's advanced to kind of sort out and judge what we do in the small and low, rather.
So it was maybe easier when, in Smith's time, when the workplace was just one place you stayed probably for your whole life, your village. So the tribe was quite close, but now every 4 years we tend to choose a different tribe. And how does that work with our sentiments for other people and our ability to understand?
I think it complicates them a lot. We can connect in different ways to different efforts, different operations, different organizations. We're more mobile, we could telecommute, we can communicate all over the world. So I think that's right. Also, we have less of a focal, like in the old days, you might say that the village or the country was a quite focal sense of what the whole was in terms of thinking about the good of the whole. And that's become a lot less focal. Certainly the village is not focal, and even the country now is less focal. So we think about humankind, but that is so large and so complex and so distant that it's harder to get a grip on.
Yeah. And Smith says that sympathy is very important, and in your article you allude to that the employer should try to see that in their employees. But how do I as an employee signal that in my CV? And especially in Corona time, how can...
Right. Yeah, the topic, if you like, the skill that I talk about in a paper that you're pointing to is sympathetic deafness. So it's kind of a deafness, an ability, a competency in sympathizing.
Yeah.
And that, such deafness is, I think, really worth exploring and defining. I'm not sure, I don't think the ways of signaling it, displaying it, are so surprising. It's in leadership, it's in participation, it's in achievement, it's in conduct in an interview, it's in, other people's assessments of your career and conduct and character, so reputation. So there's all sorts of ways you demonstrate it or signal it. But sympathetic deafness is something to explore, I think.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rich ideas that, we could go on and on, I could go on and on about in terms of analyzing sentiment, analyzing sympathy, analyzing virtues. And I think Smith is a wonderful guide on all of it.
Does it tell us anything about how we can learn to be sympathetic?
Absolutely. Again, I think these analyses help you see, say, the steps involved. Like, let's take the steps of sympathizing and sympathy. And let's take a workplace example. So let's say Jim works at a restaurant. He's in charge of clearing off the tables and setting the new tables.
Yep.
But he's having difficulty keeping up or something, and he's getting frustrated and angry, so he's experiencing a sort of trouble at work. And his manager, Mary, let's say, needs to deal with this issue, help him resolve it, get it to work better. And so Jim is the person principally concerned here with the trouble. Mary is entering into Jim's situation. So let's think about Mary sympathizing with Jim. There's 4 steps you could break this down into. First, she puts herself in Jim's shoes. Yep. Jim's situation. Second, a sentiment about that situation rises up in her. Yep. in this kind of simulation. Third, she compares that sentiment with the sentiment Jim is expressing. Okay?
Yep.
And then fourth, there's a new experience resulting from that comparison where she perhaps sees that Jim's sentiment is like hers, and therefore she more or less approves of his sentiment, or she might feel that Jim's sentiment is not enough like hers or just goes overboard. Maybe he's too angry, too frustrated. So that's a 4-step process of sympathizing, entering into feeling a sentiment in the situation, the imagined, comparing yours to the person principally concerned, and then kind of assessing that comparison. And when they agree, those sentiments, it's approval or agreement. When they disagree, it could be disapproval or antipathy even, disagreement. So just thinking about breaking that down, where you're seeing, agreeing, or whether you're entering into enough, whether you know the situation enough, and so on. So that's Mary's side of entering into.
Yep.
And that's a kind of amiable practice, entering into, being compassionate, indulging in Jim's situation. And that entering into and sympathizing with, Smith calls the amiable virtues. Now, on the other side is Jim. And he's got a set of virtues that correspond. And that is that he can't be too undone, too angry, too frustrated, too demanding of attention. So he needs to buck up and kind of enable someone like Mary to enter into his situation. If he's too loud, too miserable, too disordered, she'll just be, I'm not going to try to enter into, I'm not going to try to reason, I'm not going to try to help him. He's unreasonable, maybe we should get rid of him. So he needs to buck up. That kind of dignity, self-command, that's the respectable virtues. So we've got the amiable virtues and the respectable virtues, for example, here. And Smith does gender these, by the way, to some extent, where he associates this more with female and this more with male. However, that's just the start.
Yeah.
You need actually both sets of virtues to move upward in virtue, because think about it. Mary is entering into Jim's situation.
Yeah.
One of the things she needs to enter into is Jim's ability to buck up in his situation. Like, is he being reasonable? So she has to understand the respectable virtues to be amiable.
Yeah.
And likewise, like Jim here, he is trying to, by being respectable, and help Mary enter into his situation. So he needs to understand what being amiable into his difficulty is like. So you need, it's kind of an androgyny of upward movement in virtue. So that's just like an example.
Yeah.
Of something that we can get into. But I think these are rich and worth considering in terms of HR, management, and research.
Yeah, because when I read the article, it felt like this can maybe explain unemployment quite well. Even though it's hard to say that somebody's unsympathetic and therefore they don't have a job, but...
Yes, it could. I mean, part of the difficulty is that people don't, not only that people don't have certain, STEM skills or whatever skills, the latest way of dealing in the workplace, the machinery or what have you. It's also soft skills or social intelligence, or what I'm calling sympathetic deafness,
Yeah.
that people maybe are not that deft in sympathizing, in enabling others to sympathize with them, and that's a very, very important skill.
Yeah, and probably quite hard to acquire also and learn. I don't know if a government program would be the best case for that, but compared to other government programs for unemployment, it might actually be cheaper and better.
Yeah, it is difficult, and it's part of the school of social experience. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the best way of teaching sympathetic deafness is. I think it's hard for any organization to just say, oh, we're going to teach you sympathetic deafness, but maybe especially for the government.
Yeah, but I remember your George Mason colleague Brian Kaplan's book, The Case Against Education, where it's quite, not so sympathetic to education, say you don't really learn anything useful, but can't it actually be the useful things are maybe not the courses,
Yeah.
cooperating with other people
Yeah.
intensively in different.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the school of self-command, Smith spoke of social experience as the great school of self-command, and it's the interaction, learning how to get along with your peers and so forth. That's often maybe the main lesson.
Yeah. So I have some finishing questions. So overrated or underrated or decently rated? You don't have to say exactly. So overrated or underrated? David Hume.
I'm very high on David Hume. He was Adam Smith's best friend. They are a remarkable friendship and duo in terms of thought and philosophy. David Hume, by the way, has lately come in for quite a bit of condemnation for a footnote that he wrote on race, which exoterically is very racist. Yeah. I think people might be jumping to a conclusion about what is going on Hume's part with that footnote. I think we should be open to the idea that it is a parody of sorts or a lampoon of the very people he's arguing against in some of his early essays where he writes against slavery. So I just want to tell people that.
Oh, yeah, it's a good forum for that. The Swedish Corona strategy, whatever that is, I don't know.
Well, yeah.
Nobody knows. Use
anyhow,
maybe no.
Yeah, I am a big fan of what had been recognized as the Swedish Corona strategy. I'm generally opposed to lockdowns. So.
Yeah. Then last question: the Fear of Moral Sentiments.
It's my favorite book. I urge people to read it. I think it's very challenging, actually. It's worth reading, and it's got so many illustrations and charm to it that don't worry about trying to get to the bottom of it. I'm not sure there is a bottom, but getting so deep in it, just try to get acquainted and keep going.
Lovely. Thank you very much for being part of Roger Dialogue.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.